2023. Mr. Feinstein, may we have the roll call, please?
Yes, Commissioner Paul let us know that he had a family matter he needed to take care of tonight, so he is absent. Commissioner Kennedy?
Present.
Commissioner Greavy?
Present.
Commissioner Werblin?
Present.
Commissioner Cruzen is absent. Vice Chairperson Evans is absent. And Chairperson Matthews.
Present. Commissioner Greavy, would you please lead us in Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, now just a quick word for information to the public wishing to make public comments. Persons wishing to address the Planning Commission on subjects not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission may do so, provided that no action may be taken on off-agenda items except as authorized by law. Off-agenda items from the public will be taken under consideration without discussion by the Commission and may be referred to staff. If you wish to speak, please fill out a speaker card and bring to the front desk. If you're calling in by Zoom, please use the raise your hand feature or press *9 on your phone to request to speak. You will be called by name and have 3 minutes to speak. Okay, first, we have the approval of the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda?
There are not.
Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I so move.
And a second?
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Seeing none, the motion passes. Next, we have approval of the minutes for October 25th, 2023 Planning Commission meeting. Are there any changes to the minutes?
Not from staff.
Hearing no other changes, may I have a motion to approve?
I'll make the motion to approve.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion passes.
I
You
abstain.
Abstain. Okay, thank you. Do we need 4 to approve the minutes?
I believe it's a majority of the quorum, so it's a
Okay.
majority of those that are present.
Okay, so we're fine there. Okay, moving into public comment. This is the time for the public to speak on items not on the agenda but within the jurisdiction of the Planning Commission. I now open the public comment period. I do not see any cards and I don't see anybody online. I am now closing the public comment period. Next, we have scheduled matters. The next item on the agenda is scheduled matters. For each agendized item, there will be a presentation by city staff. For items that involve applicant requests, I will ask the applicant to address the commission if they so desire. Then I will open the public comment period via Zoom and in-house. I will close the comment period after all comments have been provided and after all of our questions regarding the testimony during the public comment period have been answered. During the comment period have been answered. After the comment period is closed, the commission will deliberate on the item and may have additional questions for staff. We cannot take additional testimony or questions from the public after the comment period is closed. Item A is a general plan update, preferred land use, and guiding policy. Our planner is Jesse Hernandez, and we welcome you to start your presentation.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jesse Hernandez, and I'll be presenting the General Plan Update, Draft Preferred Plan, and Draft Guiding Policies this evening. Staff requested this meeting to present information about the Draft Preferred Plan and solicit input on the proposed structure of the General Plan Update and proposed draft outline and guiding policies. We'll be asking 3 questions today and request final feedback by Wednesday, November 15th via email. Members of the public are also invited to provide feedback by email. The General Plan Update will set forth the vision and goals for growth in Fairfield for 25+ years. General plans are organized by chapters called elements. There are 9 topics required by state law. However, jurisdictions can choose how to structure elements to address the required topics. Jurisdictions can also choose to address additional topics. Here is a list of the existing general plan elements and the planned general plan update elements. The list is largely similar, except that the project team is proposing to remove the agriculture element. The reason for this is that there are no agricultural areas inside of the city, so the project team believes the topic can be thoroughly addressed in other elements, which is permitted under state law. The team also proposes to add the sustainability element, which would address climate issues like wildfire and flooding, energy efficiency, and water conservation, among other issues. Looking at the existing and planned elements, are there any additional elements or topics that should be added to this list?
That's a question.
Mm-hmm. And that's a question for all of you, yes.
A question on the agriculture.
Mm-hmm.
There are agricultural lands within the city currently, are there not?
There are extensive agricultural lands which are used for grazing. There aren't that many, and in fact, the City Council has given the thumbs up to develop some of those extensive lands. There are no intensive agricultural lands within the city. Those are lands that are used for farming production. There are agricultural lands surrounding the city. Our existing general plan, for example, addresses agricultural issues in multiple elements, including in the open space and conservation element. So staff propose to remove the agriculture element and thoroughly address any agricultural related issues in the open space, conservation, and recreation element, among others, as appropriate.
All right. Other topics that should be added?
I'll hold all my comments till the end of the presentation.
Okay.
Okay, sounds good. The draft preferred plan is the culmination and summary of the land use alternatives phase, which you will recall we discussed last month. This draft aims to communicate the City Council's vision for growth and development, which considered Planning Commission, GPAC, and public input solicited over 3 years. Staff will present this draft preferred plan to the City Council this December. This map presents the preferred land use plan. The numbers on this map represent key opportunities or areas of change. This image focuses on areas of change in the Cordelia area. Key elements that are called out on this map include a new commercial center with grocery store south of I-80. That's area number 1. Area 2 proposes new lower density housing and a large community park just outside existing city boundaries. 3 is the business industrial mix corridor along Business Center Drive, which would conditionally permit housing on a case-by-case basis while prohibiting warehousing uses. Number 4 is a new high-quality mixed-use lifestyle center that would also function as a destination gateway to Suisun Valley. 5 is a study area to evaluate potential lower density housing and open space on Nelson Hill. And 6 is a study area to evaluate the potential for advanced wine and food manufacturing and production at Hill Ranch in Suisun Valley, south of I-80. In central Fairfield, the City Council envisions new high-density or mixed-use housing around the transportation center and missing middle housing south of the heart of Fairfield specific plan area, depicted by number 7. Number 8 shows redevelopment of the Solano Town Center Mall into a vibrant mixed-use corridor. Number 9 is redevelopment of North Texas Street to create mixed-use nodes. And number 10 is the enhancement of Linear Park with new activity nodes, pedestrian and bicycle trails, and parks. In eastern Fairfield, the Air Force has authorized an enhanced use lease area, which will allow the lease of Air Force property to private entities for private operation. The city would like to provide input and partner with the Air Force to maximize benefits for whatever is developed here. Moving into the draft outlines, topics, and guiding policies. Following the alternatives phase, staff developed draft topic areas, outlines, and guiding policies that incorporate public input, planning commission input, and city council direction. The proposed guiding policies represent the broad direction and big picture ideas that will guide each element. The elements would also have more specific policies and programs under these guiding policies. So these really are high-level policies. The list presented today is not comprehensive. There are a couple other elements that we are not discussing today for the sake of time. After we review the guiding policies, we'll ask you 2 questions. Are there guiding policies or topics that should be added? And what additional details or implementing policies would you like to see addressed? I will summarize the key concepts and ask for your input at the end. The slides summarize the draft guiding policies by key themes, but I can pull up the exact wording anytime you like.
See, we should note that in your packet was the complete language for each of the proposed guiding policies, because it's a lot of words. We're going to summarize those tonight, but if you do wish to go over them in precise detail, we can do that as well.
When we reach the discussion portion, we can either go through the elements one by one, or you can give your comments all at once, whatever you prefer. The land use element outline addresses existing land use, growth and change, neighborhoods, and employment centers. The draft guiding policies focus on infill development that promotes higher density, transit, and complete neighborhoods. Additionally, there are policies emphasizing the Suisun Valley, Air Force, Travis Air Force Base, downtown and the 2 specific plans, the train station specific plan and the Heart of Fairfield specific plan. The community design element addresses urban structure, the public realm, arts and culture, and design for specific areas and corridors. The draft guiding policies for this element focus on walkability, safe multimodal routes, creating a sense of identity, incorporating art and culture, historical preservation, and the enhancement of linear park. The outline of the circulation element addresses the street network, multimodal movement, and roadway improvements. These draft guiding policies focus on complete streets, connectivity, infrastructure improvements, public transit, and emergency technologies such as electric vehicles. The public services element outline addresses emergency services such as police and fire, schools, utilities, and solid waste and recycling. These draft guiding policies focus on public services, safety, collaboration, education, water, and wastewater treatment. The open space, conservation, and recreation element outline addresses agriculture, conservation, open space, and parks and recreation. The draft guiding policies here focus on agricultural preservation, open space maintenance, natural resources, and parks. The sustainability outline addresses climate change and adaptation, energy efficiency, and water conservation. These draft guiding policies focus on climate adaptation, the urban tree canopy, water conservation, energy efficiency, renewable energies, and the Climate Action Plan, which is a part of the general plan update that will move forward in 2024. The environmental justice element is a newly required element under state law. The outline of the environmental justice and public health element will address healthy neighborhoods, pollution, food access, physical activity, and civic engagement. The draft guiding policies focus on pollution burden, housing quality, food access, facilities, equity, and public engagement. Here we can pause and discuss any of the topics. If you'd like to go one by one, we can start back at the structure of the general plan update, or you can give your comments all at once.
And as Jesse noted, and we'll, at some point here, Jesse, you're going to give the email address that folks
I have a next
Okay.
I have a next step slide. I was going to do that at the end, where I will again request final comments by email by Wednesday, November 15th, and I'll provide my email address. And I also plan to follow up with you all by email.
I have a question.
Okay.
Why wasn't this presentation in our packet so we could study it and have time to actually answer these questions? Because what we received was the 89-page presentation from 2021, and so I mean, sorry, this from my aspect. You're bringing all these, saying, "Hey, do you have questions?" And you're just throwing this at us now. When normally we get an agenda item, and it covers what we're going to talk about, so we can think ahead and do our proper research to make sure we're making proper presentations. And here we're being kind of rushed to say, "Oh, agree," or "We don't agree." And
so the staff report covered all of this information. It was our admin staff typically, according to our processes, distribute it in advance. So I thought that that happened.
Yeah, and I'll note that this presentation is a summary of what's in your staff report. Your staff report is, I don't know, 12 or 13 pages that includes the actual language of each of the policies. So Jesse has summarized those policies. So the language in your staff report actually is the proposed language for each of those guiding policies. What you saw here was just a quick summary of what they contain. But if you read the staff report, you'd see the actual policy language. And it's only about 13 pages in the staff report.
The staff report does have attachments showing the documents from 2021 that are referenced, just so you do have all the background information.
And that's why we're giving.
Because all my questions coming up will be on the full packet, not on the summarized version here.
And that's why we wanted to give you an extra week after this. This is mostly to introduce it to you if you have comments now, but to give you that, to be able to answer questions like that and to let you have another week to digest it and provide any further comments that you might have. Yeah, so we weren't looking to close your opportunity to comment tonight.
So Commissioner Kennedy, do you have other comments you want to bring up?
Most of my comments are designed after the whole presentation, so, because I have page numbers that I'm going to refer back to, so.
Well,
we can also.
we're at that point now.
Yes, we're at that point.
Okay.
We
So-
can also send you this presentation as well if you wish to digest
That would be
it.
greatly appreciated.
Great, I will do that.
So, okay. I'm wondering why we're, from the packet that we got, we're working up the 2021 packet. And why, and I'm going to ask some of these questions, but you showed a couple of these new drafts, but why this hasn't been updated, and having it be more of a living document? Because I know, I've been to probably 80% of the meetings between the council, the GPAC, and the Planning Commission. So I'm pretty well versed on all this. The council had specifically asked for a fourth alternative at one of their updates. Because with each of these alternatives, the three alternatives that are in this packet, it feels like what we're going to be asked to do and what the council is going to be asked to do is pick the best of the worst, because they're just not what the community has voiced vociferously at all the meetings. And little things that the attention to detail, pages 33, 36, and others, the maps, they're still incorrect. And when I say that, down in Cordelia, it shows Rolling Hills Park, and it's actually Ridgeview Park, and this was brought up by me personally at a council meeting. Cordelia Community Park is listed in an open space area that is fairly adjacent to the park itself, and so it shows this, the park itself is only 49 acres, but it shows an area that's like 300 acres. And it shows Southbrook Park, which is at the corner of Gold Hill and Canyon Hills, as a park, but it hasn't been built yet. And then another map in this project shows that as open space / available for development.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. The 2021 documents were published in 2021. Research was conducted towards the beginning of this process. This process launched in December 2020. When it launched, we also began a robust public engagement process. This process has now gone on for 3 years, and we've conducted public engagement throughout that time. However, the research components were completed in 2021. Those components were intended to provide a framework or a basis of knowledge to then inform subsequent phases. You mentioned a fourth alternative, and I understand what you're referring to. When we entered the alternatives phase in fall 2021, staff and planning consultants developed 3 land use alternatives. These alternatives are required by law as part of the EIR process, and staff were never asking the Planning Commission or the City Council to select one alternative. Rather, they were a menu of options to spark conversation. there were clear directions given that any idea not shown in the alternatives could also be discussed and selected. The City Council was first presented these 3 alternatives in November 2021. There was strong community opposition, and the City Council in response directed staff to go back to the community and conduct additional engagement, outreach and engagement. We conducted an additional 2 years of engagement, largely focused on the Cordelia area and Suisun Valley. We reported the results of that engagement back to the City Council, and we continued to present additional information to the City Council over that 2-year period. So the City Council then provided final direction that then went on to inform this preferred land use plan.
In one point of summary, the preferred land use plan that you see here, which encompasses the direction given by council, having reviewed those 3 alternatives and all the subsequent input from the community, that preferred land use plan is essentially the 4th alternative, and that is what they have said they want to see moving forward. So,
but like I said, we weren't privy to that until it was just given to us now. So
Yes.
what you asked us, to study and be a part of is everything before that, which is, in my mind is a little disingenuous. But to go on, there's been changes to the existing general plan and development, i.e. the Wiseman development out in Green Valley, the Sunset and Tabor apartments. Are those now reflected? Because those change our RENA numbers, those change the general plan itself, because those were general plan changes. And does it also include, I know the city has also approved bringing half a dozen parcels into the city limits that were piecemealed around, out in Cordelia, out in the downtown area. Has that been included in all this? And then page 43 of the plan is outdated because some of these that say are under construction have been built out for a couple of years.
Yeah, as you've noted, these 2021 informational documents are outdated in some aspects because they are, as you noted, they are not living documents. The City Council has the ability to approve general plan amendments, which they have done in the last 2 years. Although I believe you mentioned Aurora, and I do not believe that required a general plan amendment. That was permitted under existing zoning. As we move forward, what's happened in the last 1 to 2 years will be reflected in the future materials, including the preferred land use plan, the draft preferred land use plan.
When you're going out to the public and doing all these public segments and stuff, it seems like you're going off giving them 2-year-old information.
So this was just provided for context for you. In the staff report, I provided an overview of the process that has happened over the last 3 years, which is why I attached the documents that were a part of that process. We are no longer bringing these documents to ongoing engagement activities. We are bringing them up-to-date information in our presentations.
And then another one with the parks. I know through all these documents, there's several areas where the possibility of adding new parks as part of this great, Fairfield Forward plan. But when I started adding up what is already planned, which is Matt Garcia Park, which is approximately $150 million, the Southbrook Park, which would be about $2 million, Allen Witt refurbishment still has 3 or 4 phases to go, which is another 20 to 25 million. Nelson Hill, if there's limited development there, with the rest being parks, it's probably another 50 million plus.
Yeah, I can explain some of that.
Let me finish. The Green Valley Park, which is shown on here, which is around Phase 5 of the Caltrans I-680-80, that's another one. Solano Mall, you've got community centers type situation. That's all about $400 million. And one thing that I've been told over the last 12 years of this thing is we have money for parks, but we don't have money to take care of the parks. So I'm wondering how, over the next 30 years, and I know this is not, 3-year plan, this is a 30-year plan, but over the next 30 years with inflation, a $400 million budget would be needed to build all these plans. And I just think some of these are just, let's throw it out there and hope some of it sticks and get people excited about something that's just not going to happen. Because where I've lived for 27 years, I've been waiting for the neighborhood park. And even though it was on a short, when Bob Leland was here, it was on a short-term thing 20 years ago that was supposed to be built. So those things don't happen. And so the residents who buy property, live here, and they're given false hopes that this is going to happen or that's going to happen, and then it doesn't happen, it gives the residents a sour taste in their mouth about government and their elected officials, because what they're being told to buy in, and they buy in, and then it doesn't happen, it gets pushed down the road. That's frustrating, and I hear that a lot from residents, especially in the area where I live. The traffic maps. The traffic maps, I get it, but there's the traffic maps showing the extensive traffic, the +1 type stuff. It doesn't show on those how the traffic will be impacted when the I-80, 680 build out and then anticipated traffic flows, i.e. when the new Suisun Valley off-ramp would happen, the Red Top Road off-ramp off 680 happens, and Phase 5, which has been approved, going from the back end of Costco over the hill, which is shown on some of the maps, but then when it comes to the traffic studies themselves, it doesn't show those. And, there again, I love the stuff that's happening, especially Phase 5, because it will relieve traffic in a lot of those areas and hopefully lessen some of those traffic, those red zones and stuff. And those are just the little things that just are kind of concerning, that, the attention to detail. It's just like, I'm trying to figure out on page 87, it talks about jobs, how right now we're like, going off the top of my head, like a 0.43, per, so we've got about 45,000 jobs in this town with 118,000 people, and how it's talking how we'll be in a 1.4, 1.6, how we're going to add 100 to 150,000 jobs in the city in the next 30 years while only adding about 30,000 residents. And I don't see the build out from an industrial and warehousing and R&D type centers to add 100,000 jobs into this city to what we already have. So those are my comments.
Okay.
And so, so in relation to your question, what would we like to see? I'd like to see more in-depth knowledge on these subjects, the jobs, the parks, the things that we're at the commercial grocery store. What are we doing to get there? How are we going to get there? Because just throwing things out there, saying, "Oh, great, people won't have to commute," which is what we all would like, but where are these jobs going to come from? Where's the land for those jobs going to come from? Because if we're taking industrial land and turning it into to housing areas, we're cutting down the amount of developable land to create jobs. So that's my comment right there. Not easy ones either, so sorry.
I think we have some other commissioners that want to comment. Do we want to discuss the points that Commissioner Kennedy's brought up, or just take them under advisement?
We're recording this meeting and we'll be documenting and incorporating every comment made today. If Commissioner Kennedy would like a response, I can provide some information. If not, we can move on.
You can provide a response at a later date. That would be great.
At a later date?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
fine.
Okay, Commissioner Worbley.
Chairperson Matthews, I'd like to see if we can just go element by element, bring up one element, see if we have comments, and go to the next element versus all of the comments for all the elements at one per commission.
That
is my
sounds
recommendation.
That sounds very reasonable. So I guess the other thing, though, that I'd like to be able to do is going back to the overall 1 through 12 or whatever it is, 11, be able to address certain areas. I have certain
Yeah.
concerns.
We are happy to take these comments. I would like to note that this will not be revised prior to the city council meeting. And the reason for that is because this is based on clear and final direction from the city council that has incorporated or considered your feedback over the last 3 years. So we are happy to take your comments and document them.
Yeah, and I'll note that if there are aspects of this guiding direction from council here that you have comments that can inform policies for implementing that, or other aspects, from, on the map here, that's really the phase where we're at, looking for how do we best implement this big picture vision while covering all those other topics that Jesse talked about.
And Mr. Feinstein, I just want to reconfirm the ask of the commissioners. And it was my understanding is per element, staff wanted input about the guiding policies, if we needed to add anything, modify anything, that was the focus of tonight's session, was the elements and the high-level guiding policies.
That's correct.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
As well as the overall structure of the general plan. For example, do you think the planned elements, should any additional elements be added? And of course, the outline and topic areas as well. And I can pull up those slides as needed.
Thank you.
So shall we do as Commissioner Wordblin suggested, go through each of the categories and make comments and then conclude? Does that sound reasonable to everybody?
Yes.
All right, let's do that.
This is the topic areas and outline for the land use element. We also have the guiding policies. So wherever you like to start, I'll follow your lead.
So specific to land use, the transition from agricultural to industrial, am I to understand the city council has already taken a position on that with, sorry, can you go back to the overview? Is it 6? Yeah, area 6. That's already memorialized.
The city council has stated clearly that they would like to study this area indicated in the hatch lines to evaluate future advanced wine and food manufacturing and production. So yes, they have stated that their vision is to potentially transition this from agriculture to industry.
And just to state the obvious for members of the public and for us all, the fact that it may be open to that development is in no means mandating that development.
At this point, they have designated it as a study area. So yes, they are not mandating it as in stating this is what will happen. They are looking to evaluate it further.
Well, my point is private property is still subject to the uses that private property owner
Yes.
wants to, and any current use would be grandfathered in.
Correct. We have been engaging the property owners in Suisun Valley and Cordelia extensively. From our conversations, the property owner of this property would like to see development.
Okay. So let's go back to the land use section. Do commissioners want to make comments on this?
I do.
Please.
These maps were, I mean, I realize we're constricted by our computers and print paper, et cetera. But how much ground was in that item 6, the hash mark area? How many acres are encompassed in that?
It's about 200 acres.
About 200 acres.
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's at Hale Ranch Road, correct?
Hale Ranch, yeah. And we should provide some context that there are multiple thousands of acres of agricultural lands that surround the city, whether it's the productive lands in Suisun Valley or Green Valley, grazing lands around Travis Air Force Base, thousands of acres. So as a part of looking at the potential for physical expansion of the city, the only area that's in agricultural production that the council indicated that they would like to see potential for transformation to urban development was this 200 acres, essentially across from the Anheuser-Busch Brewery.
Well, then, I guess I'm misunderstood. They essentially tabled anything to do with agricultural land and said that they are interested in considering some of that property, some of the open space for development.
On that,
Are they only speaking of this 200 acres out of the entire city of Fairfield and our open space surrounding Fairfield, or is this one specific piece, but then the property behind Rolling Hills, Solano, Rancho Solano, et cetera, are we going to be identifying some of those areas also as areas for additional development?
Yeah, as a part of the review of the alternatives, in looking at Rancho Solano, for example, most of that's extremely hilly, not particularly developable at all. Council discussed and debated one particular property along the freeway behind Rolling Hills, and ultimately concluded that they didn't want to see any additional land brought into the city beyond in the Rolling Hills area. So
That was at Mario Sengo?
Correct.
Property?
Yeah. There was some discussion and debate, and the direction was not to include that.
So what areas were discussed with the possibility of being added in?
This map displays the areas you're referring to. Number 2 is sloped. It's contiguous with the city. It's owned by Dittmer and Mangels families who would like to see it developed. The property owners requested the city council to consider this property for annexation and development of low-density housing and open space, including a community park, which would be funded and maintained by private development. So this is the only area that has been proposed at this point for annexation.
Actually, two others on this, but there's 3 total. There's number 2, there's Nelson Hill, number 5, which is not in the city limits currently, and then the 200 acres in number 6.
Yeah.
Those are the only areas coming out of all the discussion with the Community Planning Commission and then ultimately the direction from City Council, that the guidance was these are areas to add to the city.
Yeah. Number 5 and number 6 are being studied. So at this point, they're not, at this point, they're being studied and considered for annexation. So there is that distinction. For example, for Nelson Hill, they would like to study access issues, wildfire safety issues, and things like that before they feel comfortable moving forward in the discussion.
The Ferrari, I think it's Ferrari property, Is that it? That's not in the city limits, right? But they're talking about bringing that in because that's a small development that, because it's so hilly.
It is within the city limits
Yeah, that's
currently.
that's already in the city.
Okay.
Correct, yeah. But Ferrari, along with number 2, Ferrari sort of sits directly to
That's the
south
orange
of
between
number
1 and 2.
That's the area where, as a part of the future improvements for the freeways in that area, there would be an extension of Business Center Drive through that area to connect over to Red Top Road.
Is that over here?
It's the one between red and 1 and
Yes.
2 in
Okay.
orange, just
Okay.
above the red.
Yeah, yeah. So in conjunction with the roadway improvements,
Yeah.
building that circulation pattern, council determined that 2 was appropriate to add to the city in that location.
That other orange would be.
All right, other comments on land use?
Sorry. My comments for that element in regards to the high-level guiding policies was just being clear of what areas that we want to protect for open space and making that more explicit, as well as defining what we mean by urban. At first point, it's talking about urban form, they were talking about urban design. I think that was switched to community design, but when we're using that term, what does the city of Fairfield or the planning department mean by that? I think it's helpful for the commission. It's also very helpful for the public to define that. And if there's any, for lack of a better term, sacred space around Travis Air Force Base, I think that should be explicit in this element.
So you might want to touch on that space next to Travis, you did briefly. What is that, 11? Are you familiar with that area? That's where the currently, what is it, 200 vacant apartment building complexes?
That actually is, it's to the right of 11. See a gray rectangle
Oh,
to the
yeah.
right, and just to the right of that gray rectangle is a light orange area, or kind of light yellow. That's the 200 acres. That's within the city limits. It's developed as apartments already. They'd be looking to rehabilitate those and bring them back online. But 11 is actually within the fence line of the base. But if I'm hearing Commissioner Werblin, you're talking about identifying the areas around the base that should be protected. Is that correct?
Yes,
From
whatever.
urban development.
Whatever that may be. I'm not saying which it should be or which area, but whatever the city council decides, I think that should be explicit in the
got it.
2050.
Okay, that makes sense.
Okay,
So while we're on 11, just that orange upside down T with the purple, is that area where used to be a shopping center, and then you go down the line, there's a Pizza Hut and auto body shops? That's that area that would be basically revitalized into a
That's the
into a
purple,
newer
and
center?
we could look at revitalizing that as part of the general plan.
That would
But
be
yeah,
amazing.
That, and, yeah, exactly, that's definitely on.
But that's-
order area in need of that.
that area, you don't have to go through the gates to access.
Not for there, but the orange to the north of that is within the fence line of the base. And the Air Force will be looking at, essentially, you can call it a public-private partnership, where the Air Force would look to lease that for some user or collection of users that can take advantage of the fact that they're adjacent to the base. Most likely, the fence line would be pulled back so that even though the Air Force owns that property, they'd be leasing it for a long-term, 90 years or so, for some other user. And so the direction essentially coming out of 11 from council was to work closely with the Air Force to make sure that as they're working through the decisions about what happens there, that we're involved in those decisions, to advocate for the kinds of uses that can best benefit the city in that area, but also to look to, how can we assist the Air Force in successfully developing that area? And that's essentially the direction for that. And that's about 140 acres, if my memory serves.
Commissioner Matthews. I'd like to roll back one more time. Number 2 on that map that for redevelopment or for development, what is the definition of new low-density residential. What is low-density residential? Is that
This-
a 5,000 square foot lot or a half-acre lot?
I can't say. These sites are constrained by steep slopes and existing utilities. I believe we estimated potential future housing to be approximately 2.5 homes per acre. So that is very low dense. Does that meet our very low dense
Yeah.
residential? That meets our very low residential density level.
And
Like
most
another,
likely.
like another Eastridge?
Probably similar to Eastridge in terms of the overall density. Most likely what would occur as the city works with the property owners out there to put together a development plan is that, you know, you've got some steeper areas, you have some less steep areas. On the whole, you'd probably be looking at somewhere 2.5-ish units to the acre, but in reality, you would have pockets that are denser, probably, 5,000 square foot lots, those kinds of things, which are definitely more dense than 2.5 units to the acre, with larger areas kept in open space.
So that orange area as part of number 2 is like where the housing segment would be portioned, and then the lighter manila color would be more of that open space and
Quite
community
possibly.
park.
Yeah, there'd be future study, after the general plan is adopted as to exactly where within there are the right places. The general plan, just at the high level, says the city is supportive of developing this area. Generally at that range, we'd probably include some policies to implement, that, what I mentioned about, putting the development, more in the flatter, more tucked away areas and preserving the more open upper hillsides as public open space, something like that.
Thank
But,
you.
but yes, the orange areas tend to be the lower, flatter areas there.
And 4 would be the truck stop area?
Yes, that's the former truck stop, also called the Garaventus site. It's approximately 44 acres.
Yeah, it's the purple blob just above the 4.
Okay, any other questions on land use? Where is the mall considered? Is that in land use or is that in infrastructure? Fine.
It's addressed, I think it will be addressed in multiple elements. Let's see.
Well, here's the point that I want to bring up. The mall sold October 3rd, and we ought to have a reach out to the new ownership group, a New York-based group. Have you already?
Yes, we've already started that engagement
Okay,
with them.
great.
Yes.
Good work.
Yep.
Did they buy the Sears building too, or did that guy keep that one?
No,
Well, the Sears, all the department stores, there was an Ernie Hahn development, they're all privately held. However, it's very complex because of the approval rights of out-parcel activities.
Yep, that's correct.
Those department stores or their subsequent owners still have the rights to. So it's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, we would expect to have conversations with all of the landowners, but we've definitely, the main landowner for the bulk of the mall, yes, we've definitely already engaged with
Wonderful.
them, and we're having ongoing, as we speak, discussions
Great.
with them. But yes, most likely the bulk of the discussion of the mall itself would occur within the land use element.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to bring out that item. So I have no more. Let's move on if there aren't. So community design comments.
My only comment about community design is, and I think it's mentioned in the guiding policies, like for instance, number 3, where it talks about create vibrant, memorial, distinctive places within the city for that strong sense of identity. Often it seems in our city, in certain areas, just the overall design is, I'll just call it a hodgepodge or a mix match. And you go to other cities, especially the smaller ones that are really developing their downtown area, it has such a distinct look and feel. When you enter into whatever that, I'll just call it Main Street USA, for that whole, several blocks, there's just this collective design that we're lacking. And I know we're really building up that Heart of Fairfield plan, and if somehow that's in the guiding policies, because it just looks, it's so choppy how we have our design structure and features.
So it sounds like you're looking for some policies to ensure that as development occurs, there's things that tie everything together to create a strong sense of place, perhaps a greater, that the individual parts come together to create a greater whole. Okay, yeah.
That strong sense of identity and that vibrancy, especially in the heart of Fairfield plan.
To follow up on her comments, developing that real sense of place. I've seen some downtowns where, you got the main drag like we have Texas, but then like one of the offshoots, maybe whether it's, what I'd love to see at Jackson Street and Texas, the old Pepper Bellies. I would love to see the city acquire that and just make that into a mini park where there's tables and stuff. And then if you shut off the block on either side or both sides and have it an open area where the streets, where you can have some pop-up, some small pop-up businesses in some containers that people could rent on a 6-month or so basis. This for emerging businesses, especially to take advantage of the diversity that we have in this community, that some of those businesses could use those pop-ups to then maybe graduate onto a full-size store downtown, and you'd create that walking, you'd get some more restaurants there, people could walk from here down, through that area, and then I just think that would be this type of sense of place that, that I could see with small town America here. So
it sounds like you're looking for an urban plaza within downtown, potentially
I think an
Pepper
example of
Bellies.
that would be downtown River, Boise, Idaho, has a similar situation all along the river there.
So
some
public
great
plaza
examples of
and
that where you
support for
just
pop-up kind of businesses,
gathering places, people could gather and just, create a little shopping district within a shopping district.
It's definitely one thing our downtown does not have, is that defined gathering space.
So anyway, that's just my only thought.
That's a great comment.
Does the city have in, conditions of approval, a mandate for public artwork in certain areas?
The only place that we have a mandate is in the North Cordelia area, essentially on the north side of Interstate 80. There is, I don't know if it's the city's ordinance or policies, that there's actually a certain dollar amount of the public projects, as you build a project, certain amount of the building permit value has to go in either into art that you install or into a fund for the city to do that. And so that's how if you can think there at the corner of Business Center and Green Valley, there's the Acorn, and if you actually look at it, it's actually a necklace with the concrete circles are actually supposed to be beads on the necklace. So things like that, and there's other installations over there in North Cordelia because there's a mandate for that.
So, cities where I've done some work in Phoenix, Denver, there's a requirement, might be 1% or half of 1%. Yeah, when we were asking for what topics should be added. Oh, pardon me, sorry. Do I need to repeat? In other cities where I've worked, Phoenix and Denver, for example, there is a requirement of a certain percentage of the development that goes specifically to artwork, and there's actually a whole commission that helps select it, and I don't want to get that granular, but when you ask for what policies should be included, in my opinion, Fairfield would be greatly enhanced if there was some kind of program for public art.
Got it.
And maybe not, you know, in every area, but definitely like the heart of Fairfield.
I think of our U.S. airports, and every time they build a terminal, a certain percentage has to go to art.
Yeah.
If you think of the Rabbit up in Sacramento, today when I was at the airport, our joke was, there's the $2 million rock. So in Terminal 2, there's this stacked granite that cost the airport like $2 million for granite. That's 10 feet tall. But those are the type of things, we don't go to those extremes. But
Yeah.
it does add something, though.
Well, and I mean, all you have to do is go to the Bay Area, go to Milpitas, and if you're going to build a structure in Milpitas, a percentage is going to go for artwork.
Yeah.
It's a given.
Yeah.
I agree with Commissioner Warblin here that I think we need, if these elements haven't been put in, they need to be, we need to make a decision on how we want downtown to look, and you're going to build to that standard if you're going to be there. Whether we want it to be Spanish or, you know, Asian or whatever you want it to be, that's the way you're going to build the facade on the front of your building so it's going to flow. It's all going to match.
And with other design elements, Vancouver, Canada, has done the most amazing thing with trees. You know, if it's a 3-story building, there's trees as part of the building. If it's 15 stories, there's all these layers of just bringing the outdoors into the downtown area. And those, I mean, probably couldn't require it, but we could sure encourage developers to get greener in those downtown areas. So there's a little less concrete, a little less glass, and maybe a little bit more vibrancy with life.
So on that topic too, one of the points I wanted to bring out is community gardens. And that's got to be only in certain areas where it makes sense. But, you know, with all the discussion of food deserts and, you know, helping people to be self-reliant, et cetera, I think community gardens is an excellent program. And that may be too granular for what we're doing here, but it's pet passion of mine.
No,
okay,
that's actually, you know, guidance in the general plan to support and promote community gardens. That's exactly the kind of input that we're looking for. And just to summarize, Commissioner Greavy, it sounds like some design guidelines or something to ensure that there, as the design occurs, that there is some unifying something.
Yes, please.
Is that what I'm hearing?
Absolutely.
Okay. Got it. Okay.
Okay, so we don't spend all night. I don't want to make you feel like you can't make your comment, but can we move forward, or do you have other things on design?
We can circulate to the circulation element.
Okay, any comments about circulation? You know, when we talk about creating a feel, and I know many people have brought this up in the past, but the linear park, I think, is just such a great opportunity that could, you know, with some of the plans that I'm familiar with, could make a huge amount of difference. And while I'm talking, I'll just dive in. Does the city have any policy with respect to self-driving cars? And the reason why I ask that is we're talking about a 20, 25-year lifespan of this, and it's clear that's going to happen significantly. And should we anticipate something to do with infrastructure as it relates to self-driving cars?
Yeah.
Looks like number 7.
Number 7 broadly addresses emerging technologies, but that's an excellent idea. I don't think it's explicitly stated, so we'll bring that, we'll document that and consult our planning consultants.
The reason why bring that up is if in fact it's widely adopted, it has huge impacts on parking. And that has huge impacts on infrastructure.
Yeah, so what I'm hearing is, as a part of the policies of the circulation element, to look to support emerging technologies like self-driving cars and evaluate whether or not the city should lower our parking standards, reduce the amount of parking that we require, or at least to evaluate our parking standards
or have
in light of emerging technologies.
An exemption if that becomes viable in the future. It's clearly not now, but.
Yeah, and that's where the general plan establishes that policy framework. It doesn't mean we're going to do it immediately, but as we build out the city, to keep that in mind. We have a directive in the general plan that says we should do that. And so it sounds like your recommendation would be that that should be a policy in the general plan. Yeah.
I'd like to bring up, you talk on here, number one, of embracing complete streets and ensure safety for comfort of cyclists and pedestrians. And then if we tie that in with number 6, with the linear park, to put in my own little plug, I'm communicating, and I hope that I can bring Blue Zones and their community concept here to Solano County. All of this creates for a much healthier environment, a safer environment with happier residents. So it's really a really important aspect of how we develop our community going forward.
Great. Thank you.
I do like, I agree with Chairperson Matthews of just the fact to be aware of emergency technologies, not necessarily pro or con on any one specific, but just to keep that in mind. And then on number 7, when it says advanced sustainability and accessibility, are you referring to just access, or are you using the word accessibility for people who may have disabilities? Because I think that's very important to have that theme when I'm using the term accessibility in that manner throughout, especially this section, well, all of the sections, but especially in this section as well.
My quick comment is on number 3, invest in roadway and infrastructure improvements. So what I'd really like the city to question our resident, define infrastructure and talk about because what we see out there on social media is infrastructure is the word, but nobody gets any specific. And if we could start educating the residents of what really is infrastructure within the city guidelines, I think that would be a huge, does that make sense? I mean, so that's my thing, because I think Fairfield for the city it is compared to especially the rest of the Bay Area, our infrastructure is really pretty good. And people like to nitpick on this intersection or that intersection, but when it really comes down to it, the city, I think does a pretty good job at it. And if we could just educate more and find out what the residents define infrastructure, so then we can pinpoint those areas, because my definition of infrastructure may be somebody else's, because I have half a dozen things of what infrastructure is, and other people just have the one. So that would be my thing.
I'm still going to nitpick on Green Valley and Business Center, but anyway, any other comments? I have one more. It's sort of an extension of one here, but I know it's something that Commissioner Greavy has brought up a number of times. The exiting in case of emergency, and making sure that we have that all carefully thought up and kind of written up. Is that covered elsewhere? Emergency evacuation?
Yeah, it's under the, what we currently call the health and safety element.
Okay.
What are we calling
all
it
right.
here?
Then never mind.
Yeah, it wouldn't necessarily be in, there's some tie over into the circulation element. But it's probably more of a safety issue. But what I'm hearing, and we can, you know, when we get to that section, is to, I think what you're looking at is making sure that we're evaluating emergency evacuation paths and needs for the community.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, any other comments? Shall we move on? Next item.
I have a comment right up at top, police, fire, emergency services. And I know we don't have any money, but I think that if we could have a larger unit on bicycles, especially with the linear park and those kinds of things, it'll create safety, it'll encourage people to use it more, and it'll help some of our fringe populations to maybe move to other opportunities.
I was at a presentation recently on the wastewater processing, which has won awards. I'm not sure if that's part of county or city, but I'm pretty sure it's city.
So wastewater is actually, it's a special district. It's the Fairfield Sassoon Sewer District.
Okay.
But essentially you can think of it as a partnership between the city of Fairfield and the city of Sassoon, and members of each of the city councils serve as the board. So it's a quasi-city function, but really it's a separate entity.
They're doing super creative, interesting, progressive efforts with plant and processing and being able to sell solid waste to farmers, etc. I mean, that stuff, I think, is we ought to find a way to encourage more of. I think it's just fantastic.
Yeah. Essentially, it's both superior and highly efficient
in
terms of the processing of it and utilizing some of those waste products, whether it's the solid waste, the methane gas you can capture from all of that, but supporting efficient, highly efficient
and environmentally friendly
systems like that. Yeah.
Other comments?
Real quick, number one, I think Fairfield just does an amazing job with all their public services, whether it's second best quality of water in this country or our police, fire, and other service. They do a great job. Number three, obviously, is the hot button not only in Fairfield, but realistically within this county with California Forever. So that, I think, will take care of itself. With number four, collaborate with Fairfield Sassoon Unified School District, and number five, combine those where maybe also work with Solano Community College to promote the opportunities for higher learning, so that maybe we can get more of those four-year programs here besides the two that we have. And if the city, even though Solano College isn't within the city limits, everything around it is or will be. I think it'd be great for the college to be able to show that its neighboring city is 100% supportive of what they're doing there, and we want to grow that and grow those opportunities for the kids here to be able to go and get a quality four-year degree right here in our own area. So that would be my only thing that I'd like to see added there, is adding Solano Community College to that, because that's where we could probably gain the greatest. So.
Along the lines of public services, I am fascinated by the number of parents that drive their children to school today. And I just happened to look something up in the last few days. The odds, if parents say, well, I feel it's safer for me to take my child to school, the odds statistically are 70 times greater that you're going to get in an automobile accident taking your child to school than if they go in a bus. And there are some programs out there now, electronic mapping programs, that are creating real amazing efficiencies. They're using it in the city of Bakersfield, Irvine, and some other towns all over the United States, and they're improving the busing. And talk about a way to get rid of pollution, make things safer for our kids. I wish we would invest some time and money into seeing what we can do to take some of that traffic and stress off. There's a whole list of arguments of teaching kids how to be on time, et cetera, that are actually positive to having them catch a bus and go to school. And I think that it's money well spent by the city. And it comes from tax dollars, but everything for the city comes from tax dollars. So
it sounds like you're looking for a policy of supporting and expanding opportunities for transit service for students.
absolutely.
My comment under public service, I agree with Commissioner Kennedy. I had on my notes too, as well as incorporating not only Fairfield Sassoon School District, but also Solano Community College. And we have those public services department listed independently, but if they could be interdependent and focus on, you know, the school district, Solano Community College. I mean, we're just talking about some of the great things that the water district is doing, interweave that in some of our programs. And I'm not sure if the school district in Solano is added in the economic development, element. I think it should be, we should somehow incorporate what are we doing for the college. I think it's great to have community college. I'm a proponent of it. I think actually college should be free, like in Canada. But how can we merge the two? Because we want to grow jobs, but in order to do that, let's use education and work together with schools in our area.
Okay, good points.
Just because I think it's important on this busing, one of the other elements that came out of these studies is your families that are lower income. Their children tend to go to school more frequently and get a better education if they have reliable service to get them to school.
Okay, great. Let's move to the next item. Open space comments that have not already been made?
My comment would be prioritizing lower income neighborhoods for when we look at revitalization of parks and including those pocket parks and open spaces. Make sure we have that focus so we can have equity in that area, in our climate. I think that goes along also with the environmental justice.
And can also be a great site for community gardens too. Doesn't have to be a big area, but okay. Go ahead.
Commissioner Kennedy actually brought it up earlier briefly, and that is we don't have, and I am the liaison for the Rockville Park, and one of the things that came out the other night when I was there is that they have been being promised for decades better services, better care of the park, more personnel to take care of the park. And if it largely, based on the information that I was provided, if it wasn't for the volunteers, the trails would be a mess, things wouldn't be in very good shape. If we're going to have parks, we need to invest in those parks, and we need to provide adequate care for those parks.
Okay.
Has the city ever done a study on doing a GVRD, Greater Vallejo Recreation District, is separate from the city itself, and I guess through tax dollars, it's funneled around instead, and the GVRD then decides on parks, and they have those monies to build the parks and do those things that kind of takes it away from the general fund. Has Fairfield ever looked at that? Because I know Fairfield hates tax increases, but.
Are you referring to a funding district or a regional service district? So I'm clear,
Sounds like a regional park district.
a regional
Yeah,
park district?
Similar to Vallejo or the East Bay Regional Park District.
Exactly.
So the city itself, as far as I know, has never taken the lead on that kind of a discussion. There's been a number over the years, meetings and discussions at the county supervisor level, because it's a broader kind of an entity than just the city of Fairfield. So there have been those kinds of discussions. I believe there's a citizen advisory committee for the open spaces between Fairfield, Benicia, and Vallejo, and that group has taken up some of the discussion as well about a regional funding mechanism for a regional park. So you could have a policy in the general plan that explore opportunities for creation of a regional park district for the larger open
whether it's
spaces.
citywide, I just know that whenever there's an economic downturn, the first two departments that always get hit are planning and parks. So
Yeah, and one of the things
if it was separated, we might not have these funding shortfalls for the parks that were 20 to 30 years behind where the park should be for a city our size.
Yeah,
so.
one of the things with a more regional park district is there's usually a tax measure that a property tax that goes to support that, and it's a dedicated tax for that purpose. So, yeah, and that can help insulate against that money getting taken for some other purpose.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you. That was it.
Okay, and if no more comments on open spaces, let's move on. Any comments?
I think it's ironic that we sit here and we say we want to prioritize and encourage the conservation of water, and then on the other hand, our economic development side says we have unlimited water, so we're going to encourage companies that come here that need to use a lot of water to process and make their products.
That's why we have to use less, so they can use more, create those jobs.
It's just a comment. I feel that water is a very precious commodity, and just because we happen to have a great water source, I don't think that we should be falling on that as the holy grail of keeping Fairfield going forward.
So wildfires, that's extremely important. It's not just us, it's a city, it's a state. It's an insurance thing that hopefully the cities can take more advantage of it. And unfortunately in 22, the county measure didn't get a whole lot of support. But what I said earlier about the trees, adding them onto buildings, that would expand the urban canopy. That would also it would help the climate action plan because it would help cool the areas as well. And it just, I really think that the more trees we can add, whether it's in a building, on a building, around a building, the better off we are as a community. And I would imagine it probably lowers people's blood pressure naturally too. So that's all I have to say on that.
Okay, let's move to the next item. Comments?
Trees lower air pollution.
I just didn't notice in the drafting policies the connection between the city of Fairfield and the Solano Public Health Department and what the partnership is with them and also with our other major healthcare organizations and working in this area. I'm missing that connection. I think is important.
Yeah, that's a good comment, because we actually, we've been developing that relationship, and so it is good to highlight that here and to continue to promote that. Their staff are amazing, and they have a particular focus as well on a lot of urban development issues and how the patterns of urban development and the way we develop, how it has an effect on public health. So I appreciate the comment that we should emphasize that relationship with Solano Public Health here.
Yeah, I appreciate that. In the Southern California, they did a study regarding air pollution and the effects of asthma on children and their asthma attack, the asthma attacks for the children. And so they partnered together to help when the studies come, okay, the air quality is getting bad, what do we need to do so we know these triggers, so things of that nature. Thank you.
Yeah, our health department, Robin Cox has talked about it at one of our meetings, one of our trainings, and we actually have a tremendously high amount of, an excessively high amount of asthma and so forth, both in adults and children, and they feel a large contributor to that is Interstate 80 and all of the housing that runs alongside of it.
Number 8 kind of ties into your blue zone. Could be a specific
It definitely
item there.
does. And my comment about buses, number 1, reduce pollution by if we could get, the 75 cars or 100, I don't know, I really should look. I live about 2 or 3 blocks away from Rolling Hills School. And every morning at 8 a.m., the steady stream of cars, and they're backed up on Hillborn, they're backed up through the city, through the neighborhood, all taking one child to school in a vehicle. If we could do that in a bus and put 50 kids on one bus, we'd be a lot better off.
Noted. Okay, any other comments? Can we move on?
I echo that 100%, living 100 yards from a school, so.
Next item.
That's our last element for today. Does anyone have any additional comments about any of the topics we discussed before I move on to next steps?
So would this be a public?
This is a good opportunity.
If there are no more comments from the commission, are there any members of the public that would like to make statements or ask questions of staff? Are there any calls online?
Looks like there are not.
Okay. Do I need to open?
It's not a public hearing, but you can officially, if you wish to open.
Okay,
Public
I
comment.
open the public comment period, and now I close it. Okay, next steps, please.
Great. If you have any additional comments, please email them to me by Wednesday, November 15th. My email address is here, and I will also email the Planning Commission a follow-up. In addition, any member of the public is invited to provide comments as well. After this comment period closes on the 15th, we will incorporate GPAC and Planning Commission feedback into these draft guiding policies, and then present them to the City Council in December of this year. Following the end of the year, we will solicit additional public, GPAC, and Planning Commission input on draft policies in the winter and spring of 2024 before we develop and release a public draft.
Yeah. So what you've seen today and what was in your staff report, those are sort of the high-level policies, but there will be drafted additional supporting policies to implement the whole of the general plan, and so that's in the winter, spring. That's that item there.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Hernandez.
And I should note, we will have a public workshop, opportunities
actually
for the public, 2 public workshops for the public to directly review, discuss, provide input before we come back to the Planning Commission.
Thank you. We're now ready for the director report.
Yeah. Just one item to note, your next meeting is the night before Thanksgiving, and at the moment, we have nothing tracking for that meeting. So you'll close the meeting tonight to that meeting, but at the moment, nothing tracking, and I don't think there's any reason we'll have any meeting that night.
Do commissioners have any statements or points they want to make in closing?
I just have one comment. We received a letter from a resident, Brenda Villanueva and her husband, in regards to the traffic this morning down in the Green Valley area. So we did receive it, we did look at it, and we'll continue to look at that situation.
Thank you for making that note. Any other comments from commissioners? If not, we're adjourned to our next meeting on November 22nd, 2023. Thank you.